from my background, or yeah, you can't ask me questions like that without being more specific.
Not a problem. Well, we know that you're from Australia, but you
Yep.
are from a certain area out of Australia, correct?
Yeah, I'm in Queensland,
Okay.
which is the top state in Australia.
Now, how long have you been in Australia? Because that actually got me curious. So you haven't been in Australia for all your life, huh?
Yeah, I was born here.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was about to say, oh man, I thought maybe you had moved there from somewhere else. That's why I was like, oh, all right. Oh,
No, I have lived here my whole life.
okay. Now, how is it out there? I know you said the day is winter time, it's 29 degrees there.
Sorry, hang on a sec. Oh gosh. Sorry, I don't know if you heard that rooster crowing.
I did.
Yeah, it's right at the back door. And the reason why I stood up and looked, I went, there should not be a rooster at my back door. I'm like, am I hearing things, or is there actually a rooster at the back door? And the little bugger has jumped the fence.
Oh no.
Damn. Yeah, so now I can't let the dogs out because this is, I live on 140 acres, okay, and we have roosters and hens and guinea fowl and geese, and it is like this mind implosion. But here's the interesting part about that, is that I actually bought this property out of fear. It was a trauma response. And it's interesting because now I'm moving more into oneness. I can actually see how much this property creates separation.
Right.
Which is, I sit here in just so much fascination at the human ability to really completely cock up their life when they're in self-sabotage.
This is true. This is very
and when
true.
They're in trauma. It's fascinating.
Yes. I've done that so many times throughout my life until I realized what I was doing. And it was like a self-reflection. And then that aha moment came and I was like, whoa. All right, now I'm starting to put two and two together, and I began to address those things because I didn't want to keep repeating those things. As you said, self-sabotage is that's not fun. And then the realization that you're actually doing it is, something different, and so yeah, it's crazy how that works out. So 100 plus acres, huh?
Yes. And also the reflection, because it was so easy to go into punishment, because when you're raised with trauma, for me, the automatic response is punishment. So if I do something good, I'm probably going to punish myself. And if I do something bad, I'm going to punish myself. And by punishment, I mean having that voice in your head that just is constantly saying, why did you do that? What did you do that for? That was a really bad decision. That was a stupid choice. And then I can feel it.
Yes.
So I can't necessarily hear the voices in that. I never used to be able to, but I can feel it. So I would walk around all the time with just this constant feeling that if I was to put it into words, it would be me just feeling like a worthless sack of shit every minute of every day. I'd wake up feeling like that. I'd go through my day feeling like that. And then I'd go to sleep feeling like that. Wow. And when you're raised with really deep emotional trauma, because mine wasn't physical, it was all emotional. When you're raised with really deep emotional trauma, it's sometimes harder to see because, and I definitely do not want to disrespect anybody, and I hope no one takes this the wrong way, but when you go through physical trauma, you can see that it's happened. Someone has hit you, someone has physically abused you, that it's happened. With emotional trauma, you don't know it's happened. You can't see it. You can't see anything come at you. And usually if you're raised with an addict, or you're raised with a narcissist, or you're raised with someone that does emotional abuse, it's very slight. It's very backhanded. It's like these constant little remarks over a long period of time.
Yes.
It's not direct. For me, my experience is someone wasn't standing in front of me saying, you're shit, you're a terrible person, you're a horrible person, my dad did say that to me twice, I remember it. But those two instances were so small that it's all the other times. It was just my mum thinking she was helping me, when in actual fact, from my perspective, she was constantly judging, constantly criticizing, constantly, nothing was ever good enough. And then it was the abuse that came from my sister that then my parents enabled. And it was them enabling the emotional abuse that she was giving to me that over a long period of time really had its impact. It meant that I was left after 2 extraordinarily bad, emotionally abusive relationships. I was left as like this empty shell with no way of knowing who I was or how I got here. And there's one moment that really that changed everything for me, actually. I was in my 30s and I think I just turned 30. And I just come out of an abusive relationship. I was 29, jumped into the relationship with another guy. We got engaged within 30 days, which was insane because I just come out of a 5-year emotionally abusive relationship, but I came out empty. I didn't know who I was. So I latched on to the first person that paid me any kind of kindness, which was this guy. And the defining moment for me in all of that was when I was standing wearing a wedding dress, trying on wedding dresses, knowing that I was marrying a man I did not want to get married to, knowing I didn't know how to say I didn't want to get married to him because I'd been so programmed to follow the path, to follow the social path. And I was about the age of getting married, but also I was really raised to make sure that my mom was happy, to make sure that I was pleasing her, to make sure that whatever I did, it was to earn her approval and her acceptance and her, all that. So me getting engaged was like firecrackers for her. It's like, oh my God, I can tell all my friends that my daughter's now engaged and she's having this beautiful wedding and I get to get dressed up, and it validated all of that in her, which meant that I felt like I was doing the right thing.
Right.
But I was actually standing there in a wedding dress, knowing I didn't want to marry this man, listening to a message on my phone of a nurse saying, because my dad had been sick for a couple of years, but I didn't know how bad it was. I hadn't seen him for a couple of weeks. And she said, you need to come now because your dad isn't going to make it. He's got about 2 hours left. And I remember standing there hearing that message and looking down at my wedding dress going, how is this my life? How is this my life? I went through with the wedding because I didn't know how to say no.
Right.
And I was married to him for 5 years until I woke up one morning and I looked at him, and I'd already started doing a lot of shadow work and a lot of trauma work on myself. So this was 15 years ago when I got together with him, when I started this work. And it was about, must have been 12 years ago, longer than 15 years, 17 years that I met him. And so, yeah, it was about 15 years when I started this work. And then after 5 years, I just opened my eyes and I looked at him and there was nothing there. It's like every chord, every contract, whatever you want to believe, every connection that I had with him that was set in place had just dissolved. And I looked at him and I said, I'm done. He said, what do you mean? And I said, I don't have to be married to you anymore. I'm done. It was the strangest feeling. But it was also amazing because I looked and went, wow, is this what it feels like to cut cords, to cut contracts? Because I'd been working on disconnecting all the cords and all the, I spent a long time doing this, actually. We're talking like a year in really intense, deep meditation for hours of just sitting and just cutting cords and moving cords and shifting cords and disconnecting contracts and all this sort of stuff. And then to actually open my eyes and go, wow, this is what it feels like to complete a journey with somebody. And then that was it. And it changed everything. And then the next defining moment, because I went through being single, and then once I left him, because of the financial situations we went through, I ended up being homeless. And I ended up living in a tent in my mother's carport because she didn't want me to live inside the house because I had 2 dogs.
Wow.
So I had to choose, do I live inside the house without my dogs, which was never going to happen,
Right.
or do I live in a tent? So I chose the tent.
Okay. All right.
But I had to beg my mom to let me come home. And then I actually went through this disconnect. So I disconnected from doing all the shadow work, from doing all the trauma work, from doing everything. I just disconnected one day. I was traveling around and I disconnected, and then I ended up pregnant, and then I had my daughter. But then 4 months after my daughter was born, I found out that my mum had terminal cancer and she wasn't meant to make it to the end of that year. And she only had about 6 months left. And again, I stood there and I looked at my daughter and I'm holding the phone going, how is this happening to me again?
Right.
How could the most thing that's meant to be the best thing that's happening in my life be completely ruined by the worst thing that could ever happen in my life? By losing, first it was losing my dad, and now I'm losing my mom. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, what? And then it has taken me, so she died 5 years ago. It took me 4 years to go through the grief of that. Like the really big, I realized it wasn't the grief of losing her. It was the grief of understanding that I was so addicted to her controlling my life.
Mm-hmm.
I was so addicted to being for her martyr. I was so addicted to having her kind of, like, if I start, it's really strange, but some people might understand this. If I started to feel too good about myself, or my life started to go in a direction where I was doing too well, I would pick up the phone and call my mom, and she would bring me right back down again.
Oh,
It's
wow.
like, it was like this negative hit that I had to keep going back for.
Yeah.
This energetic hit that would just bring me back down to feeling like a worthless sack of shit. And she did it so well. She could do it within minutes. And I when I found out that she was sick, the walls started to crumble, because I knew that something in my brain obviously knew my deal is not going to be here anymore. Who am I going to get this hit from?
Right.
And then all the uncertainty, obviously, and the fear and the panic, that I ended up with a really severe eating disorder in that time of my mum getting sick, between her passing, which is, I can tell you, is a weird experience being a 40-year-old with an eating disorder, when everything around eating disorders is all about teenagers and
Right. Yes.
young girls or young boys.
Yes.
Being a 40-year-old with an eating disorder is weird. But I ended up with one. And then when mum died, it's like every foundation that I thought I had disappeared. It just, because she was my foundation.
Right.
And I didn't know how much she had built my foundation until she was 100% gone. And there was nothing left. And for 3 years after she died, I was just spiraling constantly. Like, it was just, there was nothing. Anytime I tried to reach out to grab something, it just disappeared, because it wasn't real.
Yeah.
And so it took me 3 years of spiraling, and still in the eating disorder, still dealing with the eating disorder, of just really trying to survive, because I was a single mom to a baby, to a kid, while watching it took mum 3 years to pass away. So I was watching her for 3 years, just slowly get worse and worse and worse until she did pass away. And then it was another 3 years of me just spiraling out of control, not knowing how I was going to come out of this, and just really taking it moment by moment.
Mm-hmm.
To then, when COVID hit, like, that was that was really scary, because all of a sudden people who were my friends were turning against me.
Oh, wow.
And so what I thought was safe and secure, where I thought I had safety and security, it didn't exist anymore. People were hating each other that used to like each other. Friends of mine were getting screamed at over the fence because they weren't wearing face masks, and their neighbors would come out and hurl abuse at them. And I'd be on the phone to them and say, you know what, a couple of months ago, we were having tea together in the afternoon laughing. Now she's hurling abuse at me over the fence. Like the world everything just went weird. Which for someone who's already feeling out of control, who already feels like they don't have any foundation or safety, it amplified the fear for me. And then that's when I ran away. That's where I sold the place that I was living at, and I bought this property that was out of human contact, because I needed to get away. I couldn't stand being around people. Mm-hmm. It was really scary to be around humans, to see what they were capable of, to see and there were so many videos out there of what people were doing to each other, especially in China. That was horrible.
Yes.
But it just amplified that lack of safety that I already had, because of all the emotional abuse that I'd had, that started when I was basically the day I was born, because of the trauma that my mum went through when I was born.
Right.
There was no safety. It just didn't exist. So the last 18 months that we've been here, it has been all about building the safety, finding the safety. I used to have really severe panic attacks, and I would wake up. This is when I was back in the city, and I would wake up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning in the middle of a full-blown panic attack, thinking I was having a heart attack, because, you know, when you're woken up in the middle of the night and you're in the middle of a panic attack, it's really scary.
Yes. Yeah.
So then my first focus was dealing with the panic attacks, which was and finding that safe space for me, mm-hmm. which was to basically go and sit outside and put my hands on the ground and look at the ground and say, for me, it was a lot of in this moment right now. That's kind of what brought me back into feeling safe again. It was looking at the ground and saying, in this moment right now, my hands are touching the ground. I had to come up with statements that were very true, like very, very, very true statements, to help me come out the other side of where I was. Like, I was in hell. It was horrible. And I had to learn how to feel safe inside my body. I had to learn how to feel safe with the humans around me. I had to learn how to feel safe in the world as a general. Okay, I was starting from nothing. Right. And so for me, it was sitting on the driveway with my hands on the ground, saying, in this moment right now, I can feel my hands on the ground. And I would have this voice in my head say, yep, that's true. And I go, okay, great. And then I'd look up and I'd say, in this moment right now, I can see that green leaf on that tree. Yep, that's true. Okay, good. All right. And then I would breathe. And I did that. I'd only do it for about 10 minutes because, again, I'm a single mum to a kid. I don't have time anymore to do 1 hour meditations. They just don't exist for me in my space. Right. So I've had to find ways to create safety and to do the shadow work that I was doing and to face the trauma that I needed to face in very small increments. Yeah. Because I didn't have hours, and everything that I watched online was people who would say, now go and sit in your safe space and close your eyes and just listen to the thoughts for an hour. I'd be like, what? On what planet do you think I have an hour to sit? Are you kidding me? What? That is not happening. And then actually the guy that I was the guy that I was following, who was amazing, a beautiful man, his name's Kyle Cease, does amazing work, but he sits for 2 hours every day in silence. And I'm like, dude, that's great for you. I don't,
yeah.
I homeschool my daughter. That's not a reality for me.
Okay.
So I had to find a way to do very, very, very short, small segments. And for me, it was sitting, and it was creating the most honest, true statement that I could create about my situation. And feel free to ask me other questions if you don't want me to go down this path.
No, I'm gonna, I can relate to everything that you're saying, and I'm going to ask you a question, because I had to do something similar, very, very similar. Like your path and I, it seems like we just walked it on different sides of the earth. That's all it did. And so relating from a personal point of view, I've had to do that work. I've had to go back into my life and say, I am messed up.
Yeah.
Right. Like yourself, not feeling safe around people. There was a point in my life where I was homeless. I think I was homeless for maybe the 12th time in my life. I just lost everything. And life wasn't going too good, and I told myself, I said, if I can find myself a cave in a mountain somewhere and just isolate myself from everything, I'm okay with that. And I was okay with not being a part of society. I was okay with not having human interaction or anything like that. I was just, I just wanted to be left alone. And my reasoning is that if I'm alone, you can't take anything away from me, nor can you hurt me.
Yep. Yes. Right. Yep.
Right. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, life didn't go that way. Life said, no, we need you to go back into society, and we're gonna have to figure this out again. And I tell you what, when life punches you in the mouth so many times, you just want to wave the white flag and say, hey, no more, right? No more. And one thing that I wanted to ask you about, because I know that you were talking about when you were a kid, and being raised around your mother and your father and your sister and things like that, and how it contributed to the things that you're going through. My question is, understanding that, how was it being raised? Because when you're going through these things, you don't necessarily know, right? You know what I'm saying? The emotional abuse that it's going through. I've been with a narcissist before too, and I'll tell you a little bit about that as we go along. So having a mother that justified what the father did, but also allowing your sister. Now, your sister older or younger than you?
She was older. She was actually she was probably I would say the main abuser.
Okay.
And I want to quantify something though, because I can assure you that if she was sitting here having this conversation with you, she would say I was the main abuser.
Of course.
So it's kind of really hard. It's hard when you're in these situations, especially when it's emotional abuse, because people don't always see things the same way that you see them. And I learned that not that long ago, because I had a conversation with my cousin only a couple of months ago. And I shared with her, this is because I don't really talk to my family. I haven't talked to her since my mum passed away, so 5 years. And I just randomly picked up the phone and called her. And I shared with her something that happened when I was younger from my perspective. And she said, yeah, that's not how I remember it. And I said, okay, well, how about you share how you remember it? And she shared with me how she remembers it. And she used to talk to my grandma a lot. So she got my grandma's perspective. And I said, that's completely different to the memory I have about the experience that I went through.
Right. Yes.
And I've had that happen twice, because I remember when the week before mom passed away, I went down to see her for that week because she was jaundice and we knew she wasn't doing well and we didn't know how long she had. And when I was there, we were talking about when I broke my arm. And she said, yeah, you were walking along the rocks and you slipped. And I said, what are you talking about? She said, you were walking along the rocks and you slipped and you broke your arm. I said, no, I wasn't. I was hanging on the monkey bars. And my sister and the girl from down the road were there, and I was calling out to them to catch me, and they refused and they were laughing, and I fell and broke my arm. She said, well, that's not what I heard. And it was such an interesting moment, because I was able to take a really big step back and go, okay, so what if, and this for me is a big part of the healing with my emotional trauma and with all the voices in my head, because there's an abundance of them. For me, it was going, what if I was wrong about some of this stuff?
Yes, that was going to
And
happen.
obviously this is completely different to physical abuse. You cannot be wrong with physical abuse. You see it, it happens, you know it's happened, it's very clear, there is no wrong. It is absolute.
Right.
With emotional trauma, there's so much misinterpretation. There's so much misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much, I call it Chinese whispers in my brain. So something happened to me when I was 12 and I'm now 47. Over the course of that time, is it possible that my brain has changed the story just a little bit? Because my brain is programmed to make me feel like crap, programmed unintentionally, programmed to keep me feeling like crap, to keep me safe. Because I remember years and years and years ago, I sat and connected with my brain and went, what the heck? Like, why are you this way? And I heard, well, think about it. If you're in a space of happiness and joy and fun and laughter and you're having a great time and something goes wrong, the fall from here to here is a lot greater than if you're already here.
Right, yes.
And I went, so you're keeping me down here just so I don't get hurt? Are you kidding me? Like, this is insane. You cannot keep me sitting in the mud and cannot keep piling mud on me in my own little world on the off chance that one day someone's going to walk past and throw mud at me. I said, that's insane.
Right.
Like, we can't keep doing this.
Yes.
And so that was part of the unraveling. And another really big part for me was taking responsibility. That's hard. That has been hard, is standing here going, because there's so much of me that wants to blame my mom and my dad and my sister and my teachers and everyone else, and my grandma and everyone else in my space that either abused me or enabled the abuse. Mm-hmm. That it's so easy to sit and say, this happened because of that, this happened because of that, this happened because of that. And yes, that is all true. However, I am now a grown-ass adult that has these feelings that I have. My mum's not here anymore. My dad's not here anymore. I have nothing to do with my sister. She's not here anymore. And yet there was a time where I still had these feelings. I took on the role of emotionally abusing myself.
Yes.
I didn't have to have anyone around me to emotionally abuse me, because I had learned so well how to do it for myself that I actually didn't need anyone around me anymore. So I did go into isolation. But the interesting thing is that I came with me when I went into isolation. So
yes.
it didn't make anything change. It didn't magically make the feelings go away. It didn't magically create this happy human being because I went from this situation to this situation. It changed nothing. And I've moved a lot for that reason, because I thought, well, if I move from here to here, maybe that will actually make me feel better than what I do when I'm here. But I keep coming with me. And when I got to this place, when this is vastly different, because we're on 140 acres, we're not in the city, there's rarely human noise here. We're I cannot see or talk to anyone for weeks on end if I want to. Not good for my daughter, so I try not to do that, but I can. But I was still feeling the same way as I did when I was in the city. I still had the same fears. I still had the same worthless feeling. I still had the same heaviness that just never, ever, ever went away. And there came a time, about a year, maybe a year ago, where I was outside and I just looked at myself and I went, I can't keep moving thinking that running away is going to fix the problem, because it's not fixing the problem.
Right.
Nothing's fixing the problem. Money didn't fix the problem, because I received a big inheritance from my mum. And I thought, like most people, money is going to fix your problems.
Right. It's going to change things, and it doesn't.
And I was able to buy a house, and I can honestly say that it didn't fix shit, because you get back to a point where that money runs out, and you get back to this point where, well, now I have no money and I still feel like a worthless sack of shit. I still feel unsafe. I'm still scared. My brain's still going off like a firecracker.
Right.
Nothing has actually changed, but years have gone by and nothing has changed.
Right.
And you get to this point where, well, I got to this point where I looked and I went, enough is enough. Like, nothing I am doing to change my external world is changing my internal world. Like, nothing. I bought all the animals. We have bazillion animals. They don't bring me into oneness. They force me into separation, because it's overwhelming. There's so many. I know so much responsibility. It just kind of, you get to this point where you realize nothing you do in your external world is going to fix your internal world. It just can't. So you have to stop at some point and go, okay, I'm an adult. I am having these feelings. I am having these thoughts. Now, what do I have to do inside of me to create change? Right. Because I've done everything I can think to do outside of me to create change, and nothing is different.
Right. Now, you said something interesting when you was talking about the brain and questioning whether or not if things were true or not. I've actually experienced that myself through other sorts of trauma, the physical abuse, the emotional abuse, the mental abuse. You know, when I was younger, it was physical, up until my early 20s. Mm-hmm. You know, being molested, watching, you know, the fist fights, the having a mother that was very heavy-handed. Mm-hmm. She disciplined me. And if you looked at how she disciplined me, most people may call it abuse, right? Yeah. So I grew up with that. But also, you know, we were on a panel discussion the other day, and I think it kind of relates when we talk about the people who do these things to us. You know, do they know consciously that they're doing it? Because that can be associated with generational trauma. It's handed down through them. And then having an older sister, I have a younger sister, and I made sure that the things that I experienced that she didn't have to experience, even though she did have to experience her fair share. And it wasn't until, like yourself, you know, I'm in my 40s, and well, actually, I was in my 30s, and I finally met someone who was a narcissist, right? Mm-hmm. And I never knew what a narcissist was. But the woman that I was with, she was different, way different. And she was a good teacher. And what I mean by that is that she stripped me of everything that I was. My humanism, my identity, everything that I thought that I was, she pretty much came through and wiped that out. Mm-hmm. And I left her. And then it turned out that when I left her, she was a lot worse when I left her than when I was with her, right? And I couldn't figure out what was what. You know, we had a beautiful son. And then she admitted to me that she didn't even want him. So she used him as a weapon towards me, and that in turn allowed her to continually mentally and verbally and emotionally abuse me, to strip me,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then eventually,
Which is really common, unfortunately.
right. And I didn't know this, right? Because I was raised in the projects. I was raised poor. We grew up poor. We grew up on welfare. And when I was 15, I left home, only to run into life, right? And life, I had to experience life on another level, being in the gangs, all of the things that was associated with it, not being around family, because I had left them a long time ago, and primarily just being by myself. Even though I had all of these different people around me that claimed that they were my friends, claimed that they cared for me in certain ways. And I realized later on that it was me, it was always just me, because those same people betrayed me, tried to get me killed on more than one occasion. And then when I needed them most, there was nobody, so I lived in and out of hotels and things like that. And, primarily just had to walk this path alone. Right. And then it just moved me here and moved me there, and I don't remember.
Did you feel like a bit of a, I think it's a pinball. It's like the pinball machines where you hit them and then you go ding, 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 ding.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, what? You're going here and there and here and there and there and there and here and there and having all of these experiences. And then you get to the end of them like now and you go, what the hell just happened? Like, where did the last 40 years of my life go?
Oh, look, you said it right there. It was like, life said, oh, I'm going to move you over here. And, and I'll be homeless for 6 months at one time. And then I'll be homeless for 8 months another time, a year here, a year there, 2 years here, 6. And it was just continuous throughout my life. Right. But everywhere I ended up, I always ended up in these different, in these amazing places. And I met some great people along the way. And I met some not so great people. Right.
For sure. Yeah.
And it was like you said, it was like a pinball. Here I am one day, boom. Here I am another day, boom. And it was like, ding, like you said, ding, 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 ding. And it was like everybody was hitting jackpots except for me. Right. And then there was times where I felt that I was on top of the world. Things was going good. And all of a sudden, here comes that wrecking ball. Bam, knock you back down. And you looking back up going, okay, I wasn't really expecting that. I would try to get back up. And then as soon as I get back up and take a couple more steps, that wrecking ball comes back and runs me over again.
Yeah. Yeah. And you get to the point where I liken it to just sitting in the mud and looking around going, you know what, I may as well just stay down here.
Yes.
You get so sick of getting up and getting thrown down, and getting up, getting thrown down, getting up, getting thrown down, going, well, I'm here. I'm just going to lie here. I'm going to help put the mud on. Let me help.
Yes, we don't have to do this anymore. I'm just going to.
Let me help add the layers of mud that's going to go on top of me, because clearly you want me here. So let me participate. I'm going to actively participate in me feeling worse about myself, because it just seems like this is where I should be right now.
Exactly. Yeah. It was like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. And it was like you said, I just started pouring the mud over top of myself. I was like, yeah, no. And then every time I did that, someone would come by and say, hey, why are you in the mud? Come on, let's get out of the mud, right? And I'm thinking to myself, because all I wanted for somebody was to see me, right? And tell me that things were going to be okay. Because by the time I was in my 30s, I had lost all of my friends. Through gang violence, or either they were going to the penitentiary or and things like that. And I experienced those things myself, being shot, being stabbed, I have 2 girls, and I was not able, due to my lifestyle, I wasn't able to be the parent that I could be to them. It was like, I have these girls, and life said, oh no, we know you have them, but you are not going to be able to raise them.
Yeah.
And, and life just came back and bam, and then I had to deal with that thing, right? And then when like I said, in my 30s, I met my son's mother. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, life is going to change around a little bit, but I had not addressed these things previously, the PTSD, the trauma from being molested or being shot or being homeless or any of those things. I had not addressed any of those things. And like I said, when life seems to be going pretty good, it throws you a left hook. And my son's mother was that left hook for me. And I've never met anybody as vicious as this woman. And I was just like, holy crap, right? But really the turning point, just like yourself, that aha moment, when I left her, I was homeless. And then she helped me get into a place only to stalk me. Yes, only to stalk me, right? And then I guess she got bored and got me evicted out of that place, right? So I had to stay in my car for a little bit. She figured out which car I was driving and got that repossessed. And then so now we have this beautiful baby boy. And she goes, oh yeah, by the way, I don't want you to come by and see him ever again. And I was like, oh no, that's not going to happen. She goes, oh no, we're going to go to court. So for 2 years, she had the courts convinced that I was a piece of shit dad. And I was going, no, it's not me. It's not me, right? And being a male going through the court system is just it's not fair. So for 2.5 years, not only did I get abused by her, but I got beat up by them as well, right? And I think if it wasn't for my son, I probably would have gave up and walked away. But then something inside.
Which, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you get up if there's no one there? But this is the problem for me. I sit in a very different space, I think, where I look, and there's so many words around now about toxic masculinity and all of this BS. But I look at it and go, well, hang on a minute. What about the toxic femininity? What about these women who use their children as pawns to get back at their ex-husbands? I see it so often.
I do.
And I had a relationship with a guy who was a physical abuser. And he said, why are you not afraid of me? And he had physically abused, I think, his 6 previous partners. And the last one he actually put in hospital. He broke a couple of her ribs and he was really bad. And I said to him, okay, well, let's have this conversation. So why do you hit these women? I said, what happens to you? And he was physically abused when he was a kid. So that is part of it. Like you said before, is that generational trauma.
Yes.
And I said, why do you hit these women? And I'm not saying this is the same for every man, but this was for him. And he said, well, I always feel like, I feel like a caged animal backed in a corner. And I said, well, what happens if you walk outside? I said, what happens if you open the door and walk? And he said, they follow me. And they keep following me and they yell at me while I'm walking down the street, and I'll walk around the block while they're behind me, just constantly yelling at me. And I can keep saying, just please leave me alone. Just leave me alone. And then I get back to the house and they haven't left me alone. And I'll be sitting on a chair and he'll say, I get to this point where I feel like I'm in a corner and I can't get out.
Yes.
And I looked at him, I said, the reason I'm not afraid of you is because I will never put you there. I will never do that. Because I understand that when a man is angry and he's hurting and he's been through physical abuse, you never back him into a corner. You are asking for trouble. And he looked at me and he said, you're the first person that has ever understood that when I am angry, I need space.
Yes.
And I said, that's why you have hit every woman that you have hit. And I said, let me be clear. I'm not saying it's okay. I am not enabling what you've done. I'm not approving of what you have done, but I understand why you do it.
Right. Yes.
And it was interesting because he actually got together with the person that he was with before me. And as far as I know, he never abused her again because he understood and he was able to share with her. And they had a conversation. And he said, you need to not back me into a corner because I have to walk away. And if you follow me, this is the outcome. And she took responsibility for the part that she had played in the role and went, okay, I'm not going to do that. And so I find I struggle in this world with this masculine, feminine stuff that goes on, because I have a lot of compassion for physical abusers and for emotional abusers. I have a lot of compassion for my mum and my dad.
Yeah.
And that was part of my healing. And it was hard. It was hard because I spent so long blaming them, but I sat in this place of my only way through was to find compassion for what they had been through that made them do that to me.
Right.
That made them allow my sister to bully me in such severe ways that, and because I understand that my mum's generation, she was born just out of the Depression.
Right.
My grandpa went to war. They didn't know if he was going to come back. He lost however many mates at war. He came back an alcoholic. He didn't go an alcoholic. He came back an alcoholic.
Yes.
He became an abuser. But you cannot, there was no support back then. There was no support for physical abusers. There was no support for emotional abusers. There was no support for mental health back when I was a kid. There was none of this stuff of what we have now.
Same generation.
Yeah. And we live, and I think people, and I hear it a lot, and I have conversations with people, and I say, you sit in this space of being extraordinarily entitled because you take for granted all of this support that you now have. Yeah. If you want to be validated for how you feel, you can get on a Facebook group and put in a post and have 100 people validate how you feel.
Yes.
Do you have any idea how extremely supportive that is? And if you are a woman who is going through domestic violence, there are now domestic violence centers everywhere. Yeah. Or you can get support. You couldn't get support. For your parents, it didn't exist.
No.
For my parents, it didn't exist.
Exactly.
My mum lost, so part of my mum's trauma, she was bullied severely as a kid growing up. And my aunt was part of that. Like my sister bullied me, my aunt bullied my mum. Mm-hmm. But my mum lost her firstborn at 3 days old. And I really stepped into a massive amount of compassion for my mum when my daughter when my daughter was 3 days old. And I sat there and I looked at my daughter and I went, I don't think I could ever come back if I lost you. Like, I don't know how my mum came back from that. And when I felt that, like, I just felt it so deep in my heart, and I burst into tears for my mum. And I just went, wow, now I get why you're an alcoholic. Now I get why you never, because I have zero recollection of my mum ever saying, I love you to me. She never did. Right. Never hugged me, never said she loved me, never told me she was proud of me, nothing, ever. I have no memory of it. I have no memory of feeling love growing up from anyone in my space. It didn't exist. And I stepped into so much compassion for her because I thought, far out, if my daughter died at 3 days old and that was my firstborn, I would be so terrified to love anything ever again.
Yes, it has a toll.
It has a toll. And back then,
I'll say that.
Back then, they didn't, it's not like it is now where you get to spend time with your baby. They understand that the mother needs to grieve and hold the child, and they get to even take the baby home and maybe have a couple of hours with the baby at home, mm-hmm. and then bring it back. And there's so much support, like the support around a woman that has lost their child in the Western world. Maybe I don't know about America, but definitely over here, there's so much mental health support.
Well,
there was nothing.
There is.
There was nothing when my mum lost my brother.
No, I definitely understand that.
Back then, he just got taken away. She wasn't even told where he was buried. We don't know where he was buried. He was just taken away. Like, there was nothing. My dad was at work. He didn't take a day off work. My mum was expected to go back to work at the end of, you know, because her child had passed away. So there was no paternity leave. She was expected to go back and work.
Right.
It was different back then. And it takes a lot. It takes a lot of responsibility for the self
It does.
to look and have compassion for parents. And I'm not saying that this is the same for physical abusers. I am so acutely aware that, and I personally support people that have gone through emotional trauma and mental trauma a lot more, because I don't have the knowledge or the wisdom or the personal experience as a kid to understand what it is like to have been physically abused. It comes with a totally different story. It comes with a completely different experience. And it comes with, and I know enough because on my podcast, every woman that I've spoken to, and every man, actually, every person I've spoken to has been through physical abuse.
Yes. And it's different.
And it's like, and I just understand so clearly that it's different.
It's way different.
It's so different to emotional abuse. And I mean, that's not to say that I haven't physically abused myself through
that's common.
self-harm, the eating
self-harm.
disorder, but also sleeping around.
I've been there.
And it took a minute for me to go, okay, so I haven't been sexually abused by a man, but I sexually abused myself. And that took a minute. It was very big pill I had to swallow to go, wow, I actually did that to myself. I've never been raped by a man, but I had when I was younger, a lot of sexual relationships where I knew I didn't want to do it, but I made myself do it anyway.
Right.
And it took a minute for me to go really into the deep, brutal honesty and went, I actually raped myself. And owning that and feeling the pain of that.
Right. I can relate to that. Because at once upon a time, I felt like I was just a piece of shit, right? I had lived this life that I had survived. And so many people that I knew didn't. And I've had to make some bad choices, but I had to make those choices anyway, I learned how to survive. I always fought with these right here. I was a fighter, You're backed into a corner. Only thing I know how to do is come out swinging, right?
Yeah.
And whatever's in my path, I'm going to destroy because you're in my way, so to speak. And that's all I knew. All I knew was how to survive, and it wasn't until I got older and I had to start to have patience with myself. I had to start to forgive myself for a lot of these things. And I was humiliated. I was humbled. I was corrected and redirected on so many levels. And I think when I lost my son is when the realization came in that I was sabotaging myself, right? So I taught myself certain things along the way. Like I had to tell myself when I got the urge to want to go out and sleep around that, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm just not going to do this anymore, And then I started to tell myself, what's the difference from when I was a child till now? When I was a virgin till an adult? Well, not really too many things. So I said, okay, so what's the importance of this? It's not really important to me anymore. My son is gone. I can't have any more kids. So what's the purpose of me going out and sleeping around? And so I began to discipline myself. And then I began to see women not as objects, but as people. And I wanted to respect them because that's something that I taught my son. And I said, I cannot be a hypocrite. But I taught my son how to respect women, especially his mother. As crazy as she was, always respect people, right? You got to know how to forgive people, things like that. So there began a journey of more self-awareness. I began to tell myself, this is not important anymore. I didn't want to be in a relationship. I knew that working on the issues that I had was important for me, but also understanding that I am now alone because both my parents, my younger brother, my son, they're all gone. I'm the last of my generation. There'd be no one else behind me.
So did your son pass away?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
my son
I'm
passed away
so
2 years
sorry.
ago. My son, as a matter of fact, Father's Day this year was his 7-year anniversary.
Wow.
Um,
And how did you, I'm going to turn this around, sorry.
no, go ahead, go
How,
ahead. That's
how did you process that in your head? How did you not go down the dark rabbit hole? How did you not stay down the dark rabbit hole? Because losing a parent is different to losing a kid.
I did go down that rabbit hole.
How
It
did you get
was
yourself out?
whoa. Now that was tricky because I didn't know at first, right? So for the first 2 years after my son passed away, and my mother passed away 2 years after my son. So in July 25th, it'll be 5 years for my mother.
Yeah.
And
And your father's gone as well?
my father passed away when my son was 6 months, and my younger brother passed away 3 months after him.
Wow. So you're it.
Yeah, I'm the last. I'm the oldest and the last. I have a
Did
younger
you, but
sister.
you had two girls, didn't you, as well?
Yeah,
Did you say you had two
I
girls?
have two daughters. I just finally met my oldest daughter. She's in her 30s now.
Okay.
Right before COVID. My youngest daughter, when I was taking her to daycare and I got shot, so they made me relinquish my parental rights and charged me with child endangerment, even though it was no fault of mine. I haven't seen her since she was 2 months old, and she is now in her late 20s.
Oh, that's insane.
So that's what I mean. Every time I got into a place to where, I'm ready to be a father, I'm ready to change my life, life came and knocked me down.
Yeah.
And when my son passed away, and yes, I did go down that rabbit hole. For 2 years, I couldn't tell you what I did. I had a
Yeah. Right.
routine. I just stuck to that route. I just stuck to the
Yeah.
routine, right? I was just like, get up, go to work, come home, work out, stay in the house. I isolated, I disassociated because I had known so many people, but when that happened, so many people walked away from me. So I was just used to being alone. I didn't want to come out of my house. You
Which
know,
is weird, isn't it? When you need, it happened to me when my mum died. When you need people around you, they vanish.
no, I was used to it. I
Yeah, but it
had been,
did, I was too, but it didn't make it any easier. It's like, are
no, it
you
didn't make
kidding
it
me? You're just
easier,
walking
but
away.
in a way I understood, because what I had just experienced was it was different. It was heavy. It was very heavy. And as being a male, um, it was unfamiliar territory to me. Like I can deal with you taking my kid away from me, and it gives me something to fight for. At least I know that they're okay. When your kid passes away, there's a whole set of rules that come into place, right? You know what I'm saying? Because now you're in a place to where you feel shame and guilt, um, humiliated. You feel as if life is just unfair. So yes, for the first 2 years, I just isolated. I stayed in the house. I couldn't tell you what I did. I didn't have anyone around me. And then when my mother passed away, I completely fell over the edge. And this is a place where I call my dark well, right? It was like I was down in this well, and it's just me now, right? And there's a huge part of me that's just done. I don't want to do it anymore. This pain is so great. Like, where do I go from here? Right? I don't know. I just don't know. I don't know where to wander off to. I don't know which direction to go in. And I just remember being down on my knees and I'm just going, just take me from this. I don't want to do it anymore. And this that dark place was just there. And I wanted someone to save me. And that's all I wanted. I wanted someone to come and tell me that things were going to be okay. I wanted someone to come to say, hey, I see where you at, let me give you a hand. And that never happened. So I began this journey of, saying, okay, if you're not going to come and save me, just kick the dirt over top of me. I'm done. I'm back in that place again, right? I'm done.
Yeah. Yeah, give
And
me a shovel and let me help you dig the
right,
hole.
right. You know what I'm saying? As a matter of fact, I'll throw the shovel up there, just cover up the hole.
Yeah,
I'm not going to fight it anymore. I'm not going to come and
I
fight
do.
you.
Yeah. I know exactly where
And
you are. It's horrible. From obviously we've had very different lives. I
very
just want to
similar though.
say similar but different, but I do want to say to anyone who's sitting there going, oh, but my problems aren't anywhere near as bad as his, don't undermine the trauma that you've gone through, because it would be
Right,
very
right,
easy for me to undermine the fact, and I've had to really be conscious of that, of undermining the fact that I've never been physically abused. I've never been shot at. I thankfully have never lost a child. But it's so important not to undermine your own trauma because somebody else's has been worse
right,
than yours.
right.
And I just wanted to share that because I know how easy it is to take away from your own trauma because
It
someone
is.
else, and then you can go, oh, mine's not that bad, it's fine. It's like, no, yours is just as relevant. You are
Right.
just as damaged. You are just as broken as
Yes.
anyone else in this world. It doesn't matter if it's physical trauma or emotional trauma. It has
That's
still
what it is.
left the same scars. They're still deep, and we're all on our own journey. And like you and I, we have both, even though we come from very different worlds. I come from a very, let's say, white privileged environment. Even though my mom was a single mom, she worked full time as a school teacher and had a good salary. So we lived in one of the nicest areas in Sydney.
Right.
We didn't live in, we didn't live out the back where you saw people getting shot, or you saw, like, I lived a very privileged childhood. And but we've both still been in the mud. We
Yes.
both still understand.
Yeah,
You just give me
exactly.
the shovel because I'm going to help you just cover my shit up.
That's it,
We've both
man.
still gone to that dark place.
Yeah, and that was it, and it's
Yeah.
the journey that we both took to start to heal ourselves, right? Me as a male in this
Yeah.
world, um,
Yeah.
wishing someone would come and save me. And
They don't come.
and they don't come, right?
No
I
one's
thought somebody
coming.
did though. I thought somebody did because in this well, as I'm praying and begging for forgiveness and mercy, it was like someone dropped this rope down. I'm finally thinking to myself, somebody's up there at the top of this well, and all I can see is that little bit of light up there, right? And it
Did
seems
they drop the rope? Did you climb to the top and then
no,
did you
no,
see someone go, oh, look at that?
no, it felt as if someone dropped a rope, right? But what I didn't understand is that the rope was the lessons of and the journey of me healing, right?
Yeah.
So every time I
Yeah.
went to go grab the rope, it felt as if someone pulled it up just far enough to where I couldn't jump and get it, and then they would
Right. Yeah.
kick dirt on top of my head, right?
Yep.
And over a period of time,
That
I
was
was
like
like,
me trying to grab the
right,
wall, but there's
right.
not, I can see the wall, but I grab it and it's like, there's nothing there.
Yeah, like somebody's pulling it away, right? But
Yeah.
then the dirt became the lessons.
Yeah.
Because then over a period of time, I sat there and and it's like this dirt is sitting over top of me. I was like, oh, screw it, I'm done. I don't want to do it no more. And something said, get
Yes.
up, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
during this time, um, something inside of me opened, like this
Yeah.
book inside of me, and I began to read the story of Tony, right? And I'm looking at it like, what is this thing? I didn't know what grief was. I didn't know that, that these things that I had experienced was wrong. I didn't know. I thought it was normal. The things I had seen, I thought it was normal. I thought everyone had experienced this life the way that I did because everyone I knew was just like me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that
Yeah.
people lived good lives and things like that. I didn't know that people lived in houses and, you know what I'm saying, and had beautiful family. I did not know.
Yeah.
I didn't know, because when I had my son, it was just me and him. And I was so dedicated to being his father and becoming a better man that when all of these things happened, I was like, whoa, there's something else out here. So as I began to stand up, I began to take the dirt and I started sifting through it and I started learning from it. And I began to put the dirt underneath my foot. And over a period of maybe about a year, maybe about a year and a half, I finally got out of that hole. And I began to look back and I'm going, wow, there's no one up here. There's no one up here. So I had to put in all that work, but I filled in the hole and just use it as a stepping stone to get out. Right. And now here I am standing on top of the hole and I'm looking at this world. Now the world is different. Right. I viewed the world totally different. Then I realized, I started changing certain things about me. I stopped saying that I was broken, that I was hurt. I'm severely hurt throughout my life. And then I started seeking the paths of healing. And from there, I said, okay, what else is out there? What else does this thing has to offer me? This thing. And then I said, before I begin on that journey, I think I need to go and get help, because if not, the next time I try to take my life, I'm going to succeed.
Yeah.
So the light bulb went off, right? So I went out and searching for help and realized that, just like there was no help for our parents, and mental health wasn't even something considered back then. I didn't even know that you could struggle in your mental health. I had been a survivor so long that that was embedded in me, right? But something didn't sit right. And I said, okay, I need to go find a support group, and be around other men, because I need to learn. I need to learn how to deal with this, and not as an angry kid, but as a curious man. And then I realized there was no support for men out there. So bing, okay. Now I'm starting to understand why the other men that I'm surrounded, that I encounter, I'm starting to understand why we are the way that we are. We need a place for us. So I started a nonprofit, Memories of Us. And it was dedicated, and we're still dedicated to this day, to helping men start the path of healing. And so I use the things that I've gone through to be able to serve them. And it makes me feel good. And I realized that, oh, this thing right here, I'm very knowledgeable about. I'm going to use it, right? And so I started serving. And I was like, whoa, this feels good. And for the first time in my life, I had the sense that I was not worthless. I had the sense that I can do something worthwhile and feel good about it. And so then I realized that that was my love language. I'm a servant. I can take these things that I've gone through and I can use it. And so I started that 4 years ago. And then I started the Global Grief Network 2 years ago after a conference that I did. Very first ever Global Grief Conference. And that made me feel good, because now I'm surrounded by like-minded individuals in the grief field, right? And it was people that I can talk to. So my life took this turn. I did have my challenges. Yes, I did, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful. I no longer sabotage myself. I no longer talk down on myself. There are times where I'm just like, oh, Tony, you're an idiot, man. Like, why would you do something like that, right? And then that voice would come back and go, no, look at the lessons that you just learned from this situation that you're in. Stop calling yourself an idiot and start looking and learning. So that book began to flip pages. And I was like, man, podcasting, being able to talk to amazing individuals like yourself, I realized that right there made me happy. Doing things like this makes me happy, right? And regardless of what's going on in the world, I'm able to contribute in a way that can be long lasting, right? Sharing beautiful stories, and also being able to freely and honestly share my journey, because then I realized that, these stories are other people's survival guides.
Yeah. And there's also healing in sharing your story.
Right. Yeah.
I find there's like these the more I talk about how much compassion I have for my mom and my dad and what they went through, it layers on top of the compassion that I have. And when I talk about needing to create my own foundation of safety and what I did to create my foundation of safety, it layers it puts another layer of safety
Yes.
on that, because it's
Yeah.
like, yes, I did that. I am here. I have that element of safety. It's like these layers upon layers. And that's exactly why I love my podcast, because it, like you, it does the same thing. It layers.
Yeah.
So how did you go through that process where you bring yourself up, but then you bring yourself down, and because obviously there's the addiction to being down.
Right.
There's the habit to constantly bringing yourself back down. Oh, you're too far here. Well, you should be here. Hang on a minute. You've gone too far there. You need to be here. How did you break that? Or did you break that cycle? Or was it that you just kept, when you felt yourself go down, you would bring yourself back up again? And each time you would bring yourself higher and higher and higher?
I began to let it go.
How did you do that? What does that, tell me what let it go means. People say I let it go, but what does that mean?
When you've been on the bottom so long, right?
Yeah.
And we self-sabotage, and we knock ourselves down. And I've done that so long that I was so tired. And I said, I want something different out of my life. I'm tired of feeling empty. I'm tired of feeling numb. I'm tired of feeling this anger. And I'm tired of being hurt.
Mm.
I was so tired of that feeling, or the not feeling, the absence of it, right?
Yes.
The connection, the loss of connection. I was so tired that I just went, I want something better out of my life. I release this. I don't want this anymore.
And did you have to keep releasing it? Did you have to keep doing that until it went? I'm assuming you didn't just say, I released this once, and then all of a sudden rainbows and unicorns.
It was a process. No, it was definitely a process. When I made the decision to let it go, I said, wherever this life takes me now, I will surrender to it. Yeah. I made it, because, when I lost my son, the joy in my life went away. And I said, when I started to release all of these different things and began the journey of healing, taking accountability, I began to fill my heart with gratitude and appreciation, because then I could see the beauty of me having my son. Mm-hmm, right? Mm-hmm, and I began to accept that my son is no longer here with me, but he is. He's in everything that I do. Mm-hmm. So it was a process of going, okay, this is the journey of my life now. And I can grab onto some beautiful things. I can begin to learn from some amazing people. And so, no, it wasn't overnight. I had my tests along the way, but I began to change how I dealt with the tests that came along with me. When people came in to go, you know what? You're still a piece of shit, Tony, because of the things that you did in your life. I said, yeah, but what makes you the judge of me when your life is no better than mine? Mm-hmm. At least I can take accountability for for the things I've done. What about you? Yeah. And I began to release that. And then I looked at life again and said, I want to feel what it's like to not have to worry about living in a home anymore. And life says, well, let's see what happens this time. And I begin to accumulate things. I begin to make money and all of these different things I never had. And I had to learn appreciation. Yes. So that was part of it, because then I realized that when I took things for granted, it was taken away from me, but I began to laugh at it and go, okay, all right, no problem. And I'll start over. And with this, I take this knowledge with me and I can let go of this over here. So it was a give and trade. The more I let go, the more I received. The more I served, the more that it was granted to me. The more I started helping other people, the more this life said, okay, I am going to replace this with this. I am going to, instead of pain, the pain is still there. Don't get me wrong. The pain is still there. But now I want you to experience love. And I met my fiance. And then life said, I know you've been homeless. Tell me what it feels like to put a key in the door. And I said, oh, that's the best feeling in the world. And then life said, when these bills come about, tell me what it feels like to be able to take care of your bills. I said, oh man, that's even better. And then I said, I want more. And the more I wanted, the more I was able to let go. The more my story began to change. And I began to walk with my head held high. I was no longer ashamed of what had happened, because now I'm surrounded by people who has happened to them, that has happened to them as well, right?
Yeah. And there's so much freedom in not having shame around your story,
right?
Where you've been, who you've been, what's happened to you. When you don't have shame, that it frees up so much space for compassion for yourself,
right?
And for kindness for yourself.
That's where your release comes from.
Yes.
That's where the release comes from. When you begin to love yourself,
yeah,
wholeheartedly love yourself, is impossible.
In spite of who you've been.
In spite of who I've been.
Because you can't not be who you were. And I say this to
Exactly.
my daughter a lot, because I really understand that it wasn't anchored into my head. If she does something that is deemed wrong by my brain in some way, I will say to her, honey, I'm not angry at you. I'm annoyed at your behavior. But also remember, your behavior does not define who you are.
Right.
It just means that it was something that you did in this moment that wasn't ideal.
There you go.
But it does not define who you are. You are amazing. You are kind. You are lovely. You are thoughtful. You are generous. You are compassionate. You are all of these amazing, wonderful things.
Yes.
And you are also all of this, but you're not just this. Right. And I think, I think you'll get this when I say that I was raised believing that I was only that.
Yes. Yes.
That there was no, I wasn't allowed to be kind. I used to get punished for being kind. I used to get punished for being nice. I used to get punished for being friendly because it was towards my sister's friends, and it wasn't appreciated. There was a lot of jealousy in my family between my sister and I. And so I would get punished if I was nice to her friends. And I remember sitting back looking at that going, so I can just see it so clearly going, okay, so I am not meant to be me.
Right.
I'm not meant to be me.
Right.
That's what I learned. Don't be me.
Right.
All right. I won't be me. And the pathway back from that, similar to you, when you go through your experiences of what you've been through, you learn the same thing. It is not okay to be you. Doesn't matter what your trauma is. That's the outcome.
Depending on the version. So, and what I mean by that, as we go through life, we are who we're meant to be. We're just a different version of who we are now. Right. Yeah. So when you can look back on life, I was the version of me that I needed to be at the time that I needed to be it. Even definitely. At an early age, at 6 years old, I was molested. So I learned how to protect myself.
Yes.
But I learned how to protect. I learned a few things. I learned how to protect myself. I became angry in that process, but also loved my sister with all my heart. I was still a straight A student, so I was still that, right? And in the early teens, I started being affiliated in the gangs because now I have a release for my anger, right?
Yes.
So now I have an outlet which doesn't spill over into my home, because my mother didn't play that. I love my mother still to this day. I love her to death. I love my father to death as well, my younger brother, but I also was a protector. I wouldn't let you mess with my sister. I wouldn't let you mess with my father or my mother or my younger brother. You would have to go through me first. And when it came down to it, we're like, So when I started to come into that a little bit deeper, all of that was gone, and only thing that was left was anger. and violence.
Yep.
So I
Yes.
got into martial arts and boxing and MMA. And then once I got done with that, I got into street fighting because there was no rules. And I was so deep into the gangs that there was no shortage of people for me to do bad things to, because of things that had been done to me.
Yep.
So when I started losing my friends, I started going, this is just the way that it is. Tomorrow's not promised. So I need to do everything I can today in order to survive, to see tomorrow. But then when tomorrow comes, you lost 2-3 other friends that from the day before that you didn't know nothing about. So now you have to deal with that. As an adult, I look back on it and I go, I survived. I can smile now, right? I can look back on my life and go, that was amazingly crazy and beautiful in the same sense. And what I mean by that, I met so many great people along the way. Even being homeless, I met some great homeless people, right? That used to look at me and go, how are you out here on the streets with us? Well, I'm here, right? Then climbing out of that and being able to sit now, I can look back and go, wow, I can help someone else. And be able to share some of the tools that I used of climbing out of those holes, so they maybe don't have to struggle as hard as I did.
Or go for it for as long either.
Yeah,
I had someone say to me the other day when we were talking about relevance with what we were doing, and they said, can you imagine it's taken you 17 years to get to this point? You've been working on yourself in one way or another for 17 years, with exception to the time I took off, which I didn't know was why I was taking it off, to have a baby and then grieve the loss of my mom.
Right.
Because I stopped just before I got pregnant. I didn't know I was going to get pregnant at this time. But looking back, I can go, oh, okay, now I get why I disconnected, because I needed space to do that.
Right, yes.
But it is coming out the other side and realizing, geez, what if I could save someone 17 years?
Yes.
Because it's like it's a hell of a journey when you do it on your own. And you walk that path and you find that feeling on your own.
Yes.
It is hard. And if we can stand out and be these lights and say, so I did it on my own, don't recommend it. It's like, I don't recommend it.
No.
Not the best way to do it. So feel free to reach out at any time, because doing it on your own is not good. Not only is it not good, but it's also part of your pattern.
Right.
Because you've been raised to think you have to do this alone.
Right.
So if the first thing we can stand here and say is, you don't have to do it alone, that is a pattern.
Right.
And if you can let go of one pattern that is going to make this entire journey 1,000 times easier for you, it is that belief that you have to do this on your own.
Right.
Because you don't.
That's what makes us amazing and beacons of light for other people.
Yeah.
Because since we did go through the path, go through that journey, and we did it alone, we do have that in us, like we don't want to see the next person struggle or suffer.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have 17 years of dealing with yours, and you're going, hey, I got 17 years. Take what I've gone through, take the tools that I can give you, and use that so it doesn't take you 17 years. Right.
Yeah. Because people like you and I'm guessing you, certainly me, there's no one doing this work back then.
Right.
So I had to create all of my own tools, or what was out there didn't work for me.
Exactly. Yes.
Like it didn't, I remember back when I first started, EFT was such a big thing and everyone was tapping like crazy, and people would say, do this. And I'd tap and I go, why? This is insane. I'm sitting here for half an hour just tapping constantly about this one thing, and I have to remember. And it's like, and then I created my own tapping technique, and I went, I can see the value of tapping. I can see the value of shifting the energy. I can see the value of like just creating a little bit of distance between my stuff, but I can't do it that way. So what way can I do it? And then I came up with my own tapping technique, and it's like, hey, this works. It's
Yeah.
fast. I set the intention that once I had done it for a certain amount of time, and it was really anchored into my energy, that I could be anywhere out in public. I could be standing in a line and I could imagine myself tapping and it would have exactly the same effect.
Exactly.
And I think that some of us have just had to be so resourceful. But now through that resource, without even realizing it, we've got tools and techniques that have never been used before.
Exactly.
That can help people do things and shorten the amount of time it takes.
Right. Deep meditation. I do deep meditation.
Like me, I do 5-minute meditation.
Yeah, well, I mean, I understand yours. See, I still have the time, so I get into meditation and I think about my life. And what I do is I mentally set goals for myself in this world, like, and the vision that I have for my life, but not just my life, for my organizations that I have, this bigger vision that I have for it, because the way that I see it, one day I won't be here. And I want to leave something that's going to outlive me, a legacy, if you will, that's going to be able to carry not only the feeling, but the memory of of the people who have gone before me, to say, you didn't die in vain, right? My life was not useless. And so that's going to carry on for years and years, hopefully a lot of years after I'm gone. At least that's the goal. Right. These stories that we share, it's going to be around for generations and hopefully millennia, to where
as long as the internet exists, it's going to be there.
There you go. Because they're not going anywhere. It's like you said, as long as the internet exists, I want them to be able to come back and go, oh man, because we got hundreds of stories, right? I'm pretty sure with your podcast, you got hundreds of stories that people can go back and be able to relate to. And I think that's a beautiful part about it, because we have something for everyone. Right.
Whereas for you, where you're able to teach people how to do the deep meditations, I had to learn how to connect and how to clear energy and how to do the work while I'm washing the dishes.
Yeah, me too.
While I'm on the toilet.
Yeah.
While I'm driving, while I'm folding laundry. Like I've had to learn how to do it. In one moment, I can stand for one breath and completely shift my entire energy to be 100% grounded and in this moment, in one breath, because I've had to learn how to do it in that one moment, in that one breath. And it makes, we've got so many different ways we've come out of our trauma, that I think it's becoming such a gift for people who are just opening the door and going, where do I start?
You're right. Yes. And then that's why I enjoy being, having the colleagues that I have, because when people come and say, open up that door and go, where do I begin? I look at them and go, where would you like to start?
Yeah. Because
eventually you do have to start. So we can, I have a lot of people here that are willing to walk with you, as far as you're willing to let them. And then when they're done, we have more people that are more advanced to be able to help you take you to the next level. And we'll figure out what works with you, what works for you, right? Because not everything is going to be a great fit for you. So let's explore those things. And allowing yourself, especially, when I talk with the men, allow yourself to feel, allow yourself to lean into each other, lean into the emotions, lean into the humbleness, the humility, let your pride go. Because men, we're pride driven, what I'm saying? We always competing with each other. And so when you can eliminate all of that competitiveness, it opens up the doors for opportunity to learn.
Definitely.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to be able to do something like that has just been the biggest lesson in this world, not only for myself, but for those men that I connect with as well. And then having so many amazing people that I've connected with throughout the years it's been a sense of gratitude, because now I can say I'm no longer by myself. I know now, what it feels like to have people that genuinely care about you, right? I now know what it feels like to have people speak life over me. So in turn, I want to do that for someone else because I love sharing the feeling that I have, right? But I love walking with people through the mud too.
Yeah.
Because I see them in there, I'm going, hey, hey, we in the mud now, buddy. You know what I'm saying? They're like, what do you shake your leg? What you rub your hands for? Because man, I'm telling you, I cannot help you get out of the mud, but I can sit with you and I can give you strength when you feel as if you don't have it. And when you're ready, I'll walk with you, right? And that same sense, you got to take a breath, right? Look at things from a different perspective. Be able to stand up with that individual and go, wherever you go, if you will allow me the honor, I would be totally with you as you walk through this journey until you don't need me anymore. Right? And then I take so much away from that. And then I look for the next one, right? And then the opportunities that it has created. I've written a book that went international bestseller, you know, so many other things that have come about. And I can now say I don't regret my life. It's been
Which
beautiful.
is a powerful place to be.
Right. I have no regrets. I'm sure you feel the same, you know, throughout all the work that you've done with yourself, you know.
I wouldn't sit here and say, yep, I feel no regrets. I still have pangs where I go, what if you'd made a different decision back then? But what I do have is another voice that comes in and says, yeah, you could have gone down that path, but had you gone down that path, you might not have Bailey.
Yes.
And that's kind of my defining moment. I wish I'd had kids in my 20s and I didn't wait until I was 40 to have a kid. Such a different, not only because it's just such a different experience, but I would have had 20 more years with her than what I have now, because I just think she's amazing. And I think, I just want as much time with you as I can possibly have.
Yes.
And to think that I could have had you in my 20s. And then I have this part come in and go, but hang on a minute. You couldn't have had her in your 20s.
Right.
You may have had a different kid in your 20s, but it would not have been her. And it's like, okay, I don't know if I would want to give her up, you know, to go back to my 20s to have a different kid, because I was a different person back then. I had a different set of beliefs. I had a different mindset. I wasn't even looking at my trauma, wasn't even a thing in my 20s. I was still in having bad relationships. If I'd had a kid with a partner back then, it would have been a world of hell.
Exactly.
So yeah, but I wouldn't say that I'm in a space of absolutely no regrets. Mainly because I'm happy to say I'm not 100% through all of my own self-worth. So my own self-beliefs. I don't sit on a side of a mountain and be filled with love and compassion and appreciation for myself yet. I am still learning how to create that. I am still learning how to deal with that part of me that is so anchored to feeling like a worthless sack of shit.
Yeah.
It comes in and it's like, and some moments I go, wow, geez, you feel really bad about yourself. Okay. We need to sit and just kind of have a moment together.
Yes.
Because it is still there, but I'm also okay with that, because it is a part of me. It is a part of who I am, but it does not define every part of me anymore. And that's the big difference for me.
Yes.
Is that I've shifted myself into a space of awareness where I can see these parts, I can hear them, I can allow them, I can appreciate them, I can acknowledge them, I can accept them, but they don't run my life like they did before.
Right.
And that for me is exactly where I want to be. I don't want to be in this space where all of these parts no longer feel relevant. Like I want to be here and be able to look. And if I get triggered, because we all get triggered, I don't think it matters where you are in the world. We all get triggered. It doesn't matter how far along your space of evolution you are. Things still happen. Hurt still happens. But it's that ability to see the thoughts that are coming up, because I can sit here and there's this part inside of my brain that kind of turns and looks at that thought and goes, I can see you.
Yes.
I can see what you're thinking.
Yes.
And then I can feel it and I go, I can see what feeling you are creating inside of me. I can see the journey that you are trying to take me on. And I'm saying, no, not today, not right now. I'm going to be here because you don't control me anymore. And that is the space that I'm in now, which I'm really appreciating. But I'm happy to say I'm not 100% over here in love and bubbles and rainbows.
Oh, no, it'll never be that way.
No, I don't know. It for me, it's going to take a bit more time to really bring in that compassion, to really bring in that deep love, because I am in this space of creating trust with myself, rebuilding a trusting relationship that I have never had before in my life.
Exactly. Yes.
And I have to do that with me first. And that's where I am now. I've built the foundation of safety. I feel safer now than I have for a long time. I don't have panic attacks anymore. They stopped a long time ago.
Right.
I don't have the deep, dark depression. I don't go into, I'm not sitting in the mud anymore.
Yes.
I am standing, looking at the mud. Every now and then a toe kind of, just because it's an old habit, just kind of goes in. And then as soon as I feel the mud, it's like, whoa, I can feel that. I love that you're trying to do that to me again, but let's not do it right now.
Right.
Let's just stand here and look at this different view. And I am opening my perspective, because my perspective was extremely narrow of, like you, this is how I think life is meant to be. I don't think I'm meant to have nice friends. I don't think I'm meant to have nice people around me. I don't know what kindness is. I don't really understand what it means to have someone be nice to me.
Right.
Is someone walking up and saying something nice to me? What is that? I don't even know what that is. So it's creating, it's opening, having conversations with people like you and going, well, my perspective is just opening a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it has been challenging for me, because then I do have that part in my brain and go, yes, but then if you're not all the way over here, what could you possibly offer people? Because you're not at the end of your journey. And I look at it and I go, well, hang on a minute. I'm not in the mud.
Yes.
I'm not in the mud. I have spent
the key.
My entire life in the mud. And I got myself up, I stood up, and I stepped out of the mud. That's what I offer people. And I did that in my own way, with my own skills, through my own traumas and through my own beliefs and through my own patterns and my own stories and my own sabotages. And this is where I am.
Yes. And
so it's not easy when you see people on YouTube that seemingly seem to be in these amazing places where they say, I'm in love and bliss and happiness and unicorns and rainbows, because they only show this one part of them. They only show that good side. Whereas I tend to kind of go, I am where I am. Exactly. I don't claim to be in love. I don't claim to be in happiness. I'm not there. I know I'm not there. So I'm not going to say I'm there, but I'm here. And here is so much better than there, because there was, I don't want to swear because I get the feeling you don't swear on your podcast.
No. Please, by all means, let it out. Yes, I do swear. Yes.
Okay, great. So being there was fucking horrible. Yes. Like it was just the worst place that a human being could ever be on this earth. It was my idea of hell.
Yes.
I had death who came and sat with me for a week because I was that far away from death myself from my eating disorder. And I had to pull myself out of that. And it's just been this, and I'm sure you're going to get this, where I feel like I have resisted changing so much that it's like the universe has just grabbed me by the ankles, has just been dragging me along the sand while I keep kicking and screaming, I don't want to go, because it was so hard. It was so hard. It was so hard to face the trauma. It was so hard to face the voices in my head that were so dark. Like, it just, the voices, the things that I would say to myself to keep me feeling like that was so dark. It was so abusive. It was so easier. It was just like, I remember looking and going, fuck, if I had someone in front of me talking to me the way that I talk to myself inside my head, I would want to shoot you in the face while I chop you into 1,000 pieces and bury you and stand on your grave and go, thank God you're dead because you sucked ass.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes. Oh,
like it's so bad.
We call that
to not be there anymore.
Yeah, you're in the shit when you're inside of there, right? Because
it's horrible. I don't think people realize if they've never been there. So I get some people have never been there. There are amazing people in this world that have never been there. Well, and they're doing amazing work, and they have never been in that space.
Right.
And for the people that are there, you know, there's people like us who are going, yeah, I see you, I hear you, I feel it with you because I felt it myself. I know where you are. I know how you feel. It's the worst feeling you will ever have in your entire life.
Yeah.
But now, back then, I didn't believe it. I really didn't believe that there was an end. I really did not think that this feeling would ever stop because it had been with me for so long, and I couldn't see how I could stop doing what I was doing that would end that feeling. And then one day I went in I went into the darkest place inside myself. I went where death was. I went into that darkest fear, which for me is death. It is dying, me dying, my daughter dying, my dog dying, my cats dying. Any experience of death terrified me. I went and I sat with it and I felt it and I cried. And I felt it and I felt it and I felt it and I felt it. And I just sat there and I just felt this deepest, darkest hole, my biggest fear that I think I could have ever experienced. I felt.
Yeah.
And then I came out the other side. I haven't had that feeling since I went there. And I went, okay, we all have our darkest hole. We all have that darkest, deepest fear that we have inside ourselves. And this feeling that we have is, to me, this is my perspective, this feeling that we have that never goes away is us just constantly trying to run away from it.
Yes.
But it's not going anywhere.
Yes.
Because it's inside of us. There's not a single thing that you can purchase outside of yourself that makes this feeling go away.
This is true.
There's no amount of money that you can earn in this world that makes this feeling go away.
This is true.
It doesn't exist.
No.
The only thing that makes this feeling go away is the willingness to go and find it.
Yes.
And that has been my last 18 months of going and finding, where is this? While also dealing with my own addictions and my own patterns and my own trauma and everything that was trying to get in the way of me going and finding this feeling.
It's just like it's just like when you begin to let things go, right? You're running towards it, right? You're no longer running from it, because running from it is just going to keep following you. But that's where that feeling comes from, is running towards it head on. So I always tell people I'm a battle dog. When there's things in front of me, or if I get the sense of fear, I get excited. Like, why am I afraid? Why am I afraid of this? Right. And I'm not a track star, so I can't, running from it is not an option for me. It's like, oh, where's this feeling coming from? As soon as I pinpoint it, I'm going, I got to run into it. You know what I'm saying? Because now I'm thinking that I have to not only address this issue, but I want to understand why is that sense of fear there. I want to know it. I want to be able to dive into it, and go, teach me. Teach me why I'm afraid of you. And it becomes a passenger, a mentor to me. And I can sit there with it, and I'm like a kid with 1,000 notebooks. I'm going, oh yeah, oh wow, yeah. Oh, that too, huh? Oh, well, we're not going to do that one again, but we're going to put it down here just in case, So for me, it's like, it's my teacher. And I'm like a child. I'm like a child with a sponge for a brain, and I want to know all that I can about it, right? Because I don't want to leave this place or miss something that can be of vital importance to someone else.
I get that.
So that's why I'm like this. Okay, oh, okay. So I'm the same way with people as well. Like, sitting here talking with you, I'm like, whoa, that is amazing, right? But so I'm taking a mental notebook and going, whoa, that is really cool. Yeah, I can understand that right there, right? And that sense of curiosity, and then to hear the passion in your voice and where your heart is and things like that, I'm going, yep, I see who you are, right? And regardless of our past and everything, I see the amazingness that you carry with you. And to me, it makes me excited to see your future. Where you finally go, I'm here, right? So that's for me, like that's what it's about for me.
I'm looking forward to that moment too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all are, because it's a continuous journey, right? You know what I'm saying? It's a continuous journey. It doesn't stop.
It's interesting. I've had a couple of people say that it doesn't stop. And I've actually started to say, oh, hang on a minute. I actually think it does. I actually think that for some of us, there is going to come a moment where we have, because for me, I am still running, but there is a part of me now that is holding the hand of the part of me that is running. Right. So I'm no longer running alone. I am now running while being held inside of me, going, it's okay, you can run. You don't have to run. You actually don't have to run, but you can if you want to. But if you don't want to run, do you want to just sit down and take a break for a minute?
Exactly.
Do you want to sit on, like, how about we go and sit on this rock for a minute and let's just have a look at, let's just look at the rock. Yeah. Let's just come to this moment. Yeah. Let's look at the rock. And then we can get up and start running again if you want to, but can we just take a minute to sit and look at the rock?
And breathe.
And breathe. Because the running for me is such a deep habit.
Right. Yes.
That it hasn't stopped yet. But there is this other part that is coming in, that safer part, that wiser part, that whatever you want to call it, there's another part that's coming in that's starting to change the pattern.
Right.
And it changes it automatically. I start running, it grabs my hand. Okay, we can run. Let's run together.
Yeah.
You're not doing this on your own anymore. Let's do it together. Okay. But I don't believe, and I no longer sit in the space, because I used to say this is a never-ending journey and we're going to be dealing with our stuff for the rest of our life and then we die. And now I sit there and I go, that's not true. There is going to come a time for those of us who have done the work and who have sat in our stuff and who have sat with ourselves, sat with our darkness, sat with our light, and looked at both of it for so long and accepted it for so long and acknowledged it and loved both parts of us for so long that we're going to sit here in complete oneness.
Yes.
And that is our home in this human form. We don't have to die and go off to be one. We're going to be in this human form because we're going to accept. And I think that this is something new. This is a new way of being that's coming in, is that there are opportunities for people to accept so much of their darkness and so much of their light that they become one in human form.
Yes. And I think that's the journey, right? You know, because I know being in the darkness for so long, you know, and being able to see the world the way that I do now. And the reason why I say it never ends is because now I am learning how to allow my soul to be free in this world, to experience this world. You know, we're human beings, you know, we're souls having a human experience. And that's what I mean by that, you know, like it never ends for me because there's so many things that I have never experienced before.
And I really believe that's where the oneness comes in.
Right.
That you'll come to this point where you become one with your soul, that you are in this space. There's no more trauma because you've accepted and loved it all. There's no more hate. There's no more resentment. There's no more being triggered by the world coming at you because you are in this space of absolute love for every single part of yourself, every part of yourself, the darkness and the light. And when you come into a space, this is my belief system and this is how I'm viewing it for me, because I find a lot of peace in this, is to go, when I get to this space and I am so close of loving all of my darkness and all of my light and allowing that truest part of me to flow through, then I will move through life. Something will happen, okay, and then it will go away. Something else will happen, okay, and it will go away. And I really think it's a new opportunity. I think the veils in the worlds, in the universe, in spirit, in life have changed so much to where even they were 15 years ago. The veil was so much thicker. It was so much harder to do this work 15 years ago. Now the veil has shifted. It's so much thinner. So many more people that are waking up. There's so many more people dealing with their stuff. There's so much more available love in the world than what there ever was before. That I really do think that for some people, they are going to come to this point where they are able to sit on a rock and be in love. And that is all there is.
That's the goal.
That's the goal.
I think that's the goal. When we see things from the perspective that we do, we want people to come to a place to where they don't have to deal with these things, right? Because we put in the work, we put in the time, we put in the work, we know what it's like to be in the darkness. And that's what makes us a guiding light for everyone else. And I love the analogy that you use because I can relate to that as well. You know, as you're running through life now, you got somebody to hold, you know, that other version of yourself that's holding you. I can relate to that on a deep level because now, for the first time in my life, I am the person that I needed when I was a kid growing up through this life. So now, the version of me that became my protector is now my guardian angel. It's just the other version of myself that had to go through the shit, right? And now the grown man that I am, realizing that every day it's not going to be, every moment. I love that you break it down. Every moment is not going to be a bad moment. But when those moments do come, I'm able to have that part of me that's going, it's okay, Tony. And can hug me and tell me, you got this. And
then the next moment you're back in oneness again.
Yes. And then
it means that things happen in a moment and then they pass in the next moment. Not, it's just always here.
Right.
And it's not, the work is at the moment, the work is we're in that part where you're consciously aware of what you're doing. So when a trigger comes up, you're consciously dealing with it. There comes a point where all of this just becomes part of who you are. And I see it now.
Yes.
Where I laid down to do some breathing the other day, because I found this amazing YouTube channel, and they've got like 4-minute breathing exercises that you can do, or 8-minute breathing exercises. I'm like, I can do that.
Exactly.
And it takes me from here to here in 8 minutes. I'm like, awesome. I can do 8 minutes of focused breathing. Fantastic.
Yes.
And I sat and I did the first 4 minutes. And then this voice in my head is, yeah, this is too long. You need to get up. You've got dishes to wash. You need to go. You've got kitty litters to clean. You need to go and build a chicken coop. You need to go and deal the roosters. And then another part, automatically, I didn't do anything. Another part came in and said, I can see you. It's okay. You don't need to define this moment anymore.
Yeah.
She's got this.
Yeah.
She's actually okay. And I was just watching this happening inside my brain going, I'm not doing anything. I'm just breathing. It's all happening inside my head all by itself.
Yes.
Because now there is this part that comes in that has this. It's the part that I have rebuilt. It's the part that is safe. It's the part that has trust. It's the part that has confidence. It's the part that knows. It's the part that feels secure. It's this new part that has never existed in my head before, that just comes and takes care of the part that is shitting itself over here.
Yes.
And I don't have to change what I'm doing.
Exactly.
I don't have to stop. I don't have to think. I don't have to deal with that voice. The me inside of me actually doesn't have to do anything, because these parts are doing it all by themselves.
Yes.
And that's kind of what I mean, is you get to this point where you can simply sit in oneness and be in your energy, be who you are. A trigger comes up, your brain shits itself, and another part comes up and
it goes after it.
It just, it heals it. It holds it. It loves it. It doesn't go after it. It loves it. It heals it. It holds it.
And that's what I mean.
It makes it feel safe.
Right. That's what I mean when I say it goes after it, because when it comes up, it's like that part of me that protects me goes after it and goes, hey, come here. Come here. Yeah. Let's hug it out. Come feel this, right?
Yeah.
Feel this.
But the true you're not doing that anymore.
No.
So there is a point where you have to, do you get it? There is a point where you have to actively do this work with yourself. You have to do it.
Right.
Because there's no part inside of you that knows how to do it. There's no part inside of you that knows how to give love or compassion or kindness to any other part inside yourself, because all you've been doing is punishing yourself all the time, which is why you feel so bad.
Exactly.
So what happens is now when you do the work and you start bringing more kindness into this part, then you build a part inside of you that automatically does it for you. And you can stay in oneness. Yep.
And you can finally begin to develop a sense of, at least for me, I'm finally in a place of peace.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Where I can look at the world and go, I got this. And I can take a deep breath, and I don't have the anxiety or the frustration or the anger and things like that. I can say, I am finally at peace with myself.
Yes.
And I can look at myself in a mirror, because for the longest time I couldn't, because I was ashamed of what I saw, right? And now I can look at myself and go, you know what, you little fucker, you're fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And I can walk.
Yeah.
And I can breathe, and I no longer have to protect myself from life, because I realized that life is my teacher.
Yes.
The experiences in life is my teacher. And I can either be bitter about it, or I can become the best version of myself with those lessons. But also, I can be something for someone else, like I was for my son, like I am for my friends and things like that. I can be that for a total stranger.
Yes.
And that brings me to the place of being able to understand what it's like to breathe, to do the breath work, to sit in meditation for hours on end, to ask the universe, or, and sit in my faith too, and be able to, because I'm not a religious individual, but I do believe in God, just not the religion. And I can sit down and ask God, hey, thank you. And I can say, what's next on the menu? How can I be of service? Not only to myself, but to those around me and to those who have gone before me. How can I be of service?
Yeah.
To have the best experience in this life, I just realized something too. We've been gone for 2 hours.
I know. I was gonna when you finish sharing this, I was gonna say my daughter has been patiently waiting for 2 hours. She's been so amazing. And she's also really sick at the moment as well. She's got a cold and she's got a temperature, and so I've settled her in the bedroom. But I was sitting there going, we've been talking for 2 hours, and I feel like we could talk for another 2 hours and wouldn't
that's
even
why
realize.
I was like, because I hadn't heard the door, and I was like, hold on, let me make sure that. But before we wrap up, tell people about your podcast and where they can find it.
So if you look up lovecreatesfreedom.com, if you go to that, it takes you to a link tree at the moment. That might change, but at the moment it takes you to a link tree, and in that it has a link to the podcast on Spotify. But I say go to YouTube link, because I have a lot more that I've uploaded on YouTube, and it's also video, and it's better. There's so much more on my YouTube channel than there is on Spotify at the moment.
Okay. And where can people find you?
Same place, lovecreatesfreedom.com.
All right. Oh my God. I enjoyed talking with you. I really did. And I'm pretty sure when you want to, we can do so much more as well. We can have so many more podcasts and talk about some.
We really could.
I mean, it didn't even, I had to look down. I was like, oh, we are already in 2 hours, right? It was such an amazing conversation. Thank you. First and foremost, thank you for being on the show. And having such an amazing conversation with me. I really enjoyed it. Looking forward to so many more. And with that being said, hopefully the audience, when they look at this, hopefully you guys had a blast too. I had a blast. These 2 hours went by and I didn't even realize it.
It's been such a good conversation. I've really enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Yes, it was amazing. It was truly amazing. And with that being said, everybody, thank you for tuning in for another episode of Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know what to do if you made it all the way through, and which hopefully you did, and learned so many other things as well. You know what to do. Hit that subscribe button, hit the bell notification, and be sure to leave us a comment, let you know what you think. And with that being said, Kaylee, thank you for being on. And to everyone who's tuned in, you guys have a great night. Take care of yourself in peace.